Welcome to the MHFi podcast. I am Carl Jensen, and I am here with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
Doug, I think you have you didn't tell me about your new side hustle, but I'm down in the dungeon here, our recording studio. We should come up with a formal name for it, by the way, but I happen to glance over, and if anyone's watching on YouTube, there are just like stacks of hundreds. Are you dealing drugs now? Are we going to stop the podcast so you can do this more? Or are you Breaking Bad?
I've been slowly drugging you. I've been putting it in the water here, and that's why you're so energetic in the morning here. No, this is just some, I guess it's like stage cash, and I have a YouTube channel, and I get pitches all the time, and this on here, it says, it looks extremely real, and it feels real, but it says motion picture purposes only, and otherwise, it looks very much like a stack of 20s or a stack of 100s or 50s. And this company just wanted me to use it in a couple of videos, which I just held up and gave them a little plug. And I have these stacks of money that we can use as props. We can keep it up here to make it look like we actually know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we might have a live recording soon. Maybe I was supposed to talk to you about that before we started recording, but at FinCon, and this episode will probably go out post FinCon, so this will already be in the past, but maybe we could bring this money with us and we could persuade people to watch us so we get more than 3 people there, and then we can throw it out to the audience and they'll think it's real. It'll probably cause a riot and will be a COVID like hotspot. We'd probably be in the newspaper for all the wrong reasons. So yeah, maybe that's not such a good idea.
We'll figure out something to do with it. And speaking of COVID and stuff, I took a COVID test just the other day because my wife she's doing a picnic actually later today, and I'm going to help drop off a few things, but because it's the first time that they've gathered, everyone needs to take a test. And I was like, well, I'm going to be there for a few minutes dropping off things. So I got to swab my nose and, get the test, and everything's fine. I don't have COVID. We don't have COVID. We're good.
My hackles raised as soon as you said that. Like, Doug, are you waiting to tell me this now? I know we're a little bit socially distanced, but still we're in the dungeon. Was it the home test where you get the little swab and you stick it in your nose, or?
It was a swab that you stick in your nose, but my wife's company does COVID testing. So we just went down there and they handed us the little kit. And have you done one of those self-tests?
Yeah. Yes, okay. I have.
So it wasn't too bad. And I'm like, did I stick it up far enough? And you twist it around. And at the point where my eyes started watering, I was like, oh, I guess that's far enough. So, but yep, everything's good. We felt fine anyway, but just as a precaution and out of respect for the other people we'll be gathering with, we went ahead and got a test. So
cool. I'm glad you are negative.
Yeah, it would have been a different story. What would you have done if I said, yep, we're waiting for the results. I have been feeling a little weak the last couple of days and I can't taste food, but yeah, how about you?
Cough, cough. I probably would have ran screaming from your basement, but I don't know. I don't know anyone in my, actually I do know people who have had COVID. I know 3 people who have actually died from it, but we don't need to get into that. I don't fear it that much. I've had the vaccine, but I don't like being sick either. So I'd rather avoid the whole thing. If we can make it through without ever getting it, that would make me happy.
Yeah. And I haven't run across anyone who, not locally, but I've seen some friends that I know online, and they've gotten COVID and their whole family picked it up, and they're feeling pretty tired. And then I hear from other people that say, oh, it's like maybe a cold, like I didn't even know I was sick, kind of stuff. So anyway, who knows what's going to be going on by the time this episode goes live in a few weeks. Well, in changing subjects, we've been busy doing a few things, and you're one of the owners at Mr. Money Mustache HQ here in Longmont on Main Street. I'm a member there. It's how we met. And there was a pretty awesome event. You want to tell everybody about it?
Yeah, so Alan and Katie Donegan, who I had met in Ecuador back in November of 2016, came into town, and as long as they were here, they decided they'd put on an event. They usually do the Rebel Business School, which is more of how to start up a business, in a very lightweight manner, so you don't spend money, you don't write a business plan. But this was more of a financial freedom and mindset weekend. So it was really cool because we had all these, it was kind of like a mini reunion for me because we had Kristen from North Star Unplugged come in, and all these old friends that I had met before came into town for this thing. Some came significant distances, and it was just took a lot of energy, but it was a great event. What did you think about it, Doug? Is this the first time you've been to? You weren't at one of the previous Donegan events at the HQ, were you?
No, it wasn't. I thought it was amazing. Like a lot of the events that we've been to, it ends up being the people are the most exciting part. So I met a lot of new people, folks that you've known for years, but yeah, Kristen and Alan and Katie, and then Stephen and Lauren, who I have interviewed for my other podcast. Hopefully we'll be able to chat with them sometime soon. And, a handful of other people that just, they don't have blogs or platforms or anything, just normal people who are part of the community. So yeah, it was really awesome. And a lot of the things that Alan was talking about, Alan and Katie and yourself, you spoke, they were all things that I sort of internalized, and I've been building my business that way. And it all sort of fits together. It's a great overlap of entrepreneurship and financial independence and just sort of taking control of your destiny and what you want to work on. So I thought it was fantastic, and sort of that bite-sized weekend was the right size for me. I think that's like normally a 2-week situation, right? Like the pop-up business school or the Rebel Entrepreneur School. I'm mixing all the words that they have, but you could find them. So it's normally like 2 weeks, right?
Yes, it is 2 weeks, and it's a lot more involved. Yeah, I agree. This was a great format. The 3 days was perfect. And the other thing I liked about it was all the downtime. It wasn't listening to people speak for hours and hours. Someone would give a talk. There weren't that many talks, actually. Most of it was probably more hangout time between the hikes and the activities we did in between and all the food.
Yeah. And I think if I remember right, that was the first in-person event that Alan has given since COVID hit, like in early 2020, right?
Yeah, that is correct. He was supposed to speak at Google, and then COVID happened, which would have been great for him. But then COVID happened, so he had to do it all online, which is never, ever the same as being able to do it in person. And fortunately, we were able to see his talk that he gave to Google in person.
Yeah, that was, that's funny. I was supposed to do a talk at Google at another event in the same like New York location, like roughly the same time frame too. I didn't put that together, but yeah, I was supposed to do a talk in like April of 2020. I got canceled. So it could have been like the same week or something.
Oh, shit. Well, I think you'll all be able to give your talks in person, and probably won't be till 2022 or 2023 at this point. Fucking variants. Oh, well.
It's going to be a while. Yeah. And I guess anything else on your mind? I see a couple other bullet points, but I'm not sure what else we should get to before the main topic of today.
Yeah, one quick thing. I look forward to getting my ass back in shape. I really like all these people in town, but we don't go out to eat too often in our real life, and then people aren't in town like, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. And there's this one place that has biscuits that are about as big as your head, and I know we went there together, Doug, with a group of people, and yeah, so in my normal life, I try to avoid carbs, but if there's a biscuit as big as my head at this place, I will shove it into my mouth as fast as possible. So yeah, I put it on a little weight, but I look forward to doing some hikes and getting my ass back into a better shape.
Yeah, I ate out a lot more too, because what would happen is we'd do an interview and then we'd go get lunch, and we're, it's people from out of town. So we'd go to places that you and I usually don't go. And in fact, I went to places that I've never been before, even though I love eating out. We just don't do it all that often. So I don't weigh myself very often. So I don't know if I put on weight, but I feel okay. So
you've looked the exact same for the whole time I've known you, and I think I fluctuated by about 20 pounds. So.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think people probably know this is a mailbag episode, so we have a few questions. There were a couple questions that we forgot and didn't have time to include in our last mailbag episode. So we're going to hit those first, and then we have a series of questions from one individual at Mind Speaks 18 that we're going to hit. But we'll start off with the questions that we left behind. And the first one is from David. And this one is about travel rewards and using credit cards, and if we have any strategies personally that we like to use. So, Carl, how about you? Do you guys spend a lot of time trying to do this?
I do less than I used to. I remember there was so when I first discovered Fi, I remember there was an article from J.D. Roth about how to use a British Airways card to get a free trip to Hawaii. And you had to do the spend, and there was some loopholes we had to jump through. But the four of us went to Hawaii for all completely free. I think there were some booking fees or something like that. I've dialed it back a little bit because there's a lot of mental bandwidth and research, and also we have kids, so the travel that we can do is limited. What I have done recently is we have a couple hotel cards, and we leverage those to get free hotel rooms. I don't think we've paid for a hotel room in like 3 or 4 years, and it's really nice. I remember as a kid, whenever we traveled, we would stay in the cheapest, shittiest hotels that we could find. There'd be people screaming in the room. It would be dirty. And now, for free, we stay in these really nice hotels. We've got the World of Hyatt card and a Marriott American Express card. Those might not be the best use of points. There's always new cards coming out, and that's part of the mental bandwidth. You always have to be watching for the new offer and reading all the fine print and then putting a thing on your calendar so you remember to cancel and not pay the $400 fee. But yeah, I don't think I could speak about this as eloquently as some people, but I really enjoy those cards. We're going to use them a lot this fall, actually, for some various adventures. We got a couple nights in a mountain town on a level 4. One thing that annoys me about the cards is they give you these rewards, and you can use the reward for level 1 through 4 for a free night. And then every hotel you want to go to is like level 5. So it's like shit. So if you can actually find a level 4 hotel, it turns out to be a really good deal, because this hotel that would normally cost like close to $300 a night, in this particular instance, we get to go for free. So that'll be awesome.
Very nice. I also don't spend too much time on it. I'm kind of, my mindset overall for many things is just make a decision that's pretty good, maybe not optimized, it's not perfect, and then I don't think about it anymore. And I've kind of done this with credit cards. In my consulting days when I traveled a lot, I ran into people that really obsessed, and they would switch cards and stay at specific hotels to get status there, and they'd switch hotels to get status at another place and take different airlines if they had the option to maximize their statuses and points and all that stuff. It was like a game, and that's fine. I just didn't get into it. And currently, right now, I have a couple Chase cards, one business, one personal, and I just accumulate points there. And I have the Chase Ink card, which actually, I think you pay like it's $95 a year. And there's some other benefits, and you can earn some additional points. I don't even know all the benefits, but when I assessed the cards, that looked like a pretty good one. Plus, I had Chase points already. And I think generally I will redeem for cash back versus like anything specific. That way, I don't know if that's optimized at all, but that way I don't have to worry like, oh, can I stay at this particular hotel and what's the level and some of the challenges that you were just explaining, or like a airline flight or something like that. If I just get the cash back, I'm like, all right, got $1,000. Now I can assess like whatever value the services or the hotel or whatever with dollar amounts versus points. So I'm like, I have $1,000 and we will treat this as like real value because it's just money. Or it's money and not just points, where you have to do this internal conversion and figure it out. And I will also point people towards some of the new friends that we met, Lauren and Steven at Trip of a Lifestyle. So they got some large number of credit cards over several years. I want to say it was over 40 credit cards in X number of years. And they were able to take advantage of the signing bonuses. And I think that is where you can really get, huge outsized leveraged points and returns, but you have to apply for the cards. You have to keep track of the cards and cancel them when you're done. And then you end up with a huge stack of cards you have to deal with. If you're not borrowing money in the near future, it shouldn't impact your credit because your credit score doesn't really matter unless you're borrowing money for a home or a car or some other stuff. So anyway, we'll link up to Trip of a Lifestyle in their analysis because they've thought about it. And I haven't.
Cool.
Yep. And I think that's it. Anything else with credit cards or?
One closing thought. One of the luxuries of Fi is you don't have to obsess over this. I used to do the same thing, and it's nice not to have to think about it because I would, and there's very little value. Like after you've done, like I used to obsess about this. I used to book something and then continue to look and see if I could get a lower fare and all that. And it's nice being able to use your brain for something more valuable than trying to save an additional $10 per day on some rental car or some other stuff like that.
And it's fun to find those. I think it wasn't that long ago. My wife looked at a hotel, like booked it, and then maybe a week or two before we were supposed to stay there, she checked again and the rates were cheaper. So she like rebooked it and saved whatever, $50, something like that. Yeah. So, but mental bandwidth because you're thinking about it the whole time. And then, I mean, eventually we got to drink a couple extra beers because of it. So it's not a bad thing, but okay. Next one is from Roxanne over on YouTube. And this is kind of an interesting question. So if your Fi journey was a movie, what movie would it be?
This one took some thought. I've got some goofy answers. Maybe Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure, Dumb and Dumber. But what I came to is, and this sounds kind of stereotypical because you hear this movie being brought up all the time in the financial independence space, but it was Fight Club, but without all the violence. I don't go around beating people up or getting the shit kicked out of me, which is the more likely outcome of a situation in my life. But just the mindset, how the guy in the beginning, the Edward Norton character, is obsessed. I think there's one part where they're making fun of IKEA and they're showing all this crap he wants in his condo, and then he kind of evolves to care about better things in life. Or maybe worse, because I think in the end they kind of reject society and start blowing shit up. So no fights, no violence, no blowing stuff up, but just the change in mindset from being concerned about all this superficial crap to putting more value on true happiness and trying to figure that part out.
Yeah. It's like Fight Club without the fighting.
Fight Club without the fighting and without the blowing up the buildings at the end. I do not want to do anything like that.
Okay. It's kind of like, well, just having a club. So I guess it's kind of like HQ in some ways.
Oh, maybe there's a movie coming. We'll have Stash Club or Mustache Club.
Stash Club.
Stash Club. The first rule of Stash Club, Doug, is you do not talk about Stash Club.
We'll have to do something about that little blog attached to the whole thing. A couple people are figuring it out.
Shit.
So I think for me, I forgot about Fight Club. It's one of my favorite movies and books too. They actually follow along pretty closely. But another movie that was released right around the same time is Office Space. So I think that one fits me pretty well. I love that movie, and we should, I've thought, I haven't talked to you about it, Carl, but we could do like a watch party a watch party, just you and I watch it, and then have an episode where we talk about how realistic, unfortunately, Office Space is in so many ways. Because that was basically like a lot of years of my working career.
Oh, it's been a long time since I've seen that, but I remember how frequently we would talk about it at our actual job. So yeah, it hits a little bit too close to home. Maybe we'd have some PTSD going back and watching that thing, and we'd have to turn it off at times to let it digest.
We'll go out and actually this would be a funny opening scene for our podcast. I guess we would just get a printer from like Goodwill or something and just beat the shit out of it with a baseball bat.
No, we've got the one at the HQ that continues to cause problems, and that thing pisses me off. I actually
that's right.
I actually threatened to throw it out the window last time. It took me hours and hours, and the damn thing will throw off all these weird error codes. Like you've got a 924 error code, and then Google doesn't even know what the hell's going on. So then you just start shaking the thing. Yeah, we'll do that printer. Maybe we'll start by throwing it off the roof of the HQ. Oh, I hate that thing.
Yeah.
I got to go try to fix it after this recording, actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm going there after this to try to. It's like a 942 error or some bullshit. I'm gonna give that thing an error.
Oh man. Okay. So those are good movies. Pretty solid. Pretty solid. Okay. Good question. Thanks to David and Roxanne for sending in those questions. And let's get into the meat of it here. We have a series of questions. And again, this is from Mind Speaks 18. Carl, do you want to kick it off and read the first little section here?
Yeah, sure. So the first one I've subtitled Journey to Fi. So he says, once someone learns the basics and investment is automated for 401k, sorry, a little typo here, Roth and etc. How do I focus on other things than money? Because Fi is a new concept. I cannot get it out of my system. I continue to research more and more. So it sounds like he's obsessed with fire and can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that in a lot of ways, that's kind of my personality too. I'll get interested in something and then I'll research obsessively until I reach some conclusion or it sort of culminates to the end. So quick example, I think in some previous episodes, I was telling you I was getting obsessed with guitars and older guitars and antique guitars. And eventually I bought this Recording King guitar. It's a little parlor deal and it's from 1939. People in the podcast or on the video can see it sitting in front of me. So it's a pretty cool instrument, really fun. And I literally researched for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I got it. And now like I've quenched my thirst for that guitar for the time being. And I'm not worrying about it so much. But with Fi, I didn't go in as deep. And I think once I figured out that certain things were in place, that I just needed to ride it out and stay the course, and then everything would be fine. And I luckily have many, many other interests, some very adjacent, close to Fi and financially related, but other things are completely unrelated. So it's pretty easy for me to move back and forth from topics. And if I feel like I'm going a little too deep into something, I can hop over to one of my other interests. So what do you think, Carl?
Yeah, so when I discovered it, I did go bonkers. I went crazy. I started reading all these blogs. I started my own blogs, and I just kind of thought about it nonstop. If you asked Mindy, my wife, about it, she would probably say I wouldn't shut the hell up about it. I think it's good to understand it. It's good to do the research, read The Simple Path to Wealth, figure out the changes you're going to make in your life. But then I think you shouldn't think much more about it at all. One of the points I tried to make in my talk this weekend was I did become obsessed and I did all these crazy things. And that was the wrong way to go about it. I think you should focus on your happiness and focus on day-to-day happiness, especially no matter how much your job sucks. You can't rely on this external circumstance to make your life better, because it won't. And that happened with me. I reached this and then my life was better, but I wasn't any happier. So you should figure out what makes you happy, work on your life, and do those types of things. And the point I think is true for a lot of people is once you realize the stuff that makes you happy, it's not necessarily stuff that costs a lot of money. A new car and a big house might give you fleeting happiness, but those aren't the things that give you long-term happiness. So get your life right, learn how to invest, learn the mechanics of money. And I think if you do it all right, for many of us, Fi will just be a happy side effect of doing that. So yeah, I can't stress this enough to really enjoy the journey. Don't hate your day-to-day life and think this is going to make your life better, because it won't. Find joy every day.
And I'll mention that a lot of people that we met over the weekend at this event, several people sort of shifted their lifestyle. And I think I'll make a quick analogy with like dieting. If you go on a diet and you lose a lot of weight and it's an unsustainable diet, you're probably going to revert back to sort of your baseline or whatever your lifestyle or eating habits were before. So usually, I'm no dietitian or health consultant of any kind, but usually if you can adapt your overall eating style and lifestyle and you can be at a healthy weight, that's probably going to be better than some yo-yo diet where you lose 50 pounds and you go back up and go back down. So I think in a similar way, if you can adjust your lifestyle while you're on the journey to FI to figure out like what makes you happy. And really, I'm just paraphrasing what you have said so many times, Carl. Like, you can't all of a sudden hit financial independence, quit your job, and then you're going to be happy. You have to get your other shit in order ahead of time. And that'll probably be a gradual, sometimes painful process where you don't know what's going to make you happy or how it's going to fit in with your family or other people in your life. So I would say, focus on your lifestyle. It sounds like you have your finances sort of automated. Things are in a good spot. But if you can figure out the things that are going to make you happy, like I'm starting to hike more and just take some days off and be outside. And that seems to be really good for my sleep and overall attitude and getting away from the noise of the town and cars and stuff like that. So I realized, hey, if I could throw in another day, like every 2 weeks, like that's probably going to be a really good thing for me overall. So any other thoughts on that lifestyle angle?
Yeah, one quick thought. I won't say financial independence is easy because it might not be for many of us, but it is simple. There's not that much stuff you have to learn. Investing isn't hard. Index funds aren't that difficult. The hard part is figuring out your life and your happiness and what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. This is the most fun thing, but also may be the most difficult to figure out. And this is where you should be spending your mental bandwidth, not thinking about how to optimize an index fund or trying to save 3 basis points on your index fund or whatever. Focus on life, not the money, and the money will hopefully follow.
Right. Very good. Let's see. I can move on to the next one if you're ready.
Sure, let's do it.
Family and relatives. I was raised in a lower middle class household in India. I had a wealthy extended family who always mocked our money situation. That left a big scar on my mind, and I wanted to make money for their validation. I was so wrong, and I stopped it 5 years ago.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think he has come to his, I don't want to say senses, but he's in a better place now. What I would say, if you've got people who are mocking you for your money, those people aren't worth worrying about in the first place because they're kind of dicks. I don't know. I might say if you've got people in your life like that, their family, you might have to, first of all, if they weren't family, I would not keep those people around. But if they're family, they're people that you're going to have to run into and probably spend time, and there could be other rifts if you try to eliminate them from your life. But that's pretty toxic on their part. And if they're toxic in other ways too, they might be worth letting go of. Just because someone is family doesn't mean you're obligated to spend time. Families do all kinds of bad shit to other people in family. But I think the main thing is just, I heard Kevin Smith say this one time, the movie guy, someone was making fun of him, and the best revenge is living well. And I like that, but I don't like it. I think the living well part is great, but the revenge part kind of speaks to his ego and that you're still trying to get back at him. I would just live well and ignore that shit altogether.
I have 2 thoughts. One is, well, it's great that sounds like you've moved past needing like external validation. And I feel like I reached that point sometime, I don't know, it was probably in multiple levels. I was going to say a little bit in high school. I was pretty nerdy. Then in college, and then in my career, I realized I didn't need the external validation, even though it was around like raises and being evaluated against my peers. I realized I really didn't give a shit what the managers thought. So that is a terrible employee, what I'm describing. So I think once you move past that, like, and you start to have like your own internal validation, you're like racing your own race instead of playing someone else's game. Because if you're playing your own game, you can design the rules how you want it to fit whatever is going to make you happy. So, and I think, so many of our conversations go back to navigating towards happiness and away from like, discomfort in some ways and negative people. So that's my overall thought. The secondary is Kevin Smith, I was going to say, I have his book on the shelf over there, Tough Shit. Are you a Kevin Smith fan?
I do. I like him, and I had no idea he wrote a book. So there you have it.
Yeah. Do you listen to audiobooks much, or are you more of a print guy?
I do both. Probably print a little bit more than audio, but I do audio too. Like hikes.
All right. I was going to say, I'm going to send you home with it if you want. It's a quick read, and the audiobook's very good. Kevin reads it himself and then ad libs. So there's a little bit extra in the audiobook where he just goes on a riff. But yeah, he's great. His movies have been fine overall, but as a podcaster and person that I became like re-aware of in the last like 2 or 3 years, I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. He's very cool. Have you listened to his podcast at all?
I have not. I don't think I knew he had a podcast either. What's that called?
Gosh, you know what? I think it's called the Smodcast.
Okay.
You'll have to look it up. But if you just want to do a quick catch up on what's been going on with him, check out his interviews on Joe Rogan. I think he's been on twice, say in the last 4 years or so. And you could just kind of hear about what he's been up to. And he's very, pro podcast, pro like do your own thing. And you don't need like validation from the movie networks or whoever. Like if you're creative and you want to do something, like just do it and then you'll figure it out along the way. So very hard left turn there, but I was like, oh, Kevin Smith. Like very few people are like, oh, I want to quote Kevin Smith. So.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome advice. I really like the part about external validation. If you're going for that, you're going to turn yourself into someone who's not really you. And do you want people to like you for who you are, or do you want people to like you for this caricature you've made of yourself? The former answer is always the better one.
Nice. All right. Next section here is called Forgiving Myself. Carl, you want to?
Yeah. So I had all the access and opportunities to start investing back in 2009 when I landed in the USA. However, I thought I had so much money compared to my early adolescence, I spent recklessly. I cursed myself many, many times for these stupid mistakes. I know I cannot change the past. I started to forgive myself, but still spend time cursing myself every week. I want to be free from that thought. I want to break free and forgive myself forever. How do I take the right step towards it? Doug?
How are we ending up with these deep questions? I mean, people have heard the other mailbag episodes, right? I mean, we talked probably for 10 minutes about asparagus pea. What's the chemical, the organic chemistry thing you got?
It's called asparagine, which is what obviously asparagus is named after. But yeah, we forgot to do our asparagus pea experiment at dinner the other night too. We had asparagus and we were going to get a stopwatch and see what happened as far as how long it took. But yeah, we forgot. I guess we'll have to have asparagus again.
I did text you that night, late that night, like, hey man, how did your pea turn out?
I wonder, hey, Doug, here we are. We're going to take another asparagus pea side journey. I wonder if asparagus must have some organization, like you see those commercials for meat and pork, the other white meat. I wonder if there's like an asparagus advocacy organization. And if there is, we should reach out to them. Maybe they want a little spot. I mean, I don't mind advocating for vegetables. They're good for you and save the environment and all that shit. But yeah, maybe we can have a deeper relationship with whoever. I'm going to make a note to look this up, see if there is an asparagus, whatever that would be called.
Check it out. Yeah, we can do some live spots where we talk about, don't worry about how the pea smells. It's not a big deal. Like they just need a better image. They've been tainted for years with this asparagus pea, just stigma. It's a real stigma. Okay, we'll answer the question. This is very interesting. There's a couple takes here. One is in the past is the past. What this person is describing are all sunk costs. So looking at it from a more like logic and less therapy oriented view, these are sunk costs. You made some mistakes in the past. That money is spent. Those things are done. So you can really only like make decisions based on where you are right now. And you can't rely on sunk costs because it's just, it's a fallacy. They call it a fallacy. So you potentially are making bad decisions if you're thinking, oh, I made a mistake in the past. So just move forward. And the fact that you're aware of it now is great. And I think that's, maybe all you need to do. And I am no therapist, but I think the fact that you acknowledge it and you're self-aware is probably 90% of what you need to do.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to this is how many times do you talk to someone about financial independence and they say, I wish I would have had this information when I was 20. I'm like, dude, you're like 31. So where I'm going with this is, and I think this guy is still pretty young. He's a lot younger than either of us. Like, most people never figure this shit out. How many people live their whole lives like this, or live till they're like, or at 70 figured out? I remember I was at an investing seminar. I got very lucky to be able to experience this thing. I don't think I was even 21 yet, but I looked around and everyone else is like 70 or whatever. Their time was over. They should have been investing a long time ago. They should have figured this out five decades ago. So, yeah, don't worry about it. I think this guy is in his early 30s, I would guess, or maybe even like late 20s. So you've got plenty of time. Learn from those mistakes, like you said, Doug, and move on. Don't consider the past for another moment unless it's going to have some application to the future that you can learn from and make a decision on. But you should not fret over this or have regrets over it.
I didn't become aware of Fi or some of the, general ideas of investing until I was maybe like 34 to 35. So, I mean, luckily I had been saving some, just like you, Carl, because you were like 37, right?
Yes.
But yeah, we were relatively frugal, not super frugal, but we generally were saving. And I actually remember some of the first couple of years in my full-time job, for whatever reason, I was like, oh, you know what? I am going to max out my 401k. So I ended up putting in like 25% of my salary in there. Maybe not quite that much, but yeah, I maxed it out when I didn't know any better, but I was like, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to make a good decision here. And I didn't realize how significant it would be in like 40 years. But yeah, the fact is I didn't discover any of this stuff until I was 35 and made so many bad decisions in investing, specifically buying a home that I was probably overextended in a bad area with bad timing. I mean, I have probably 5 or 6, like, not catastrophic mistakes, but pretty significant just fuck ups. And if I could have gone back, sure, it would have been great. But, sunk costs, so I can only move forward. And quick side note, we'll probably talk about it at some point, but I had a foreclosure in that home that I was describing. And that it was a strategic foreclosure. It wasn't a primary home at that time. But essentially, that is an exercise in sunk cost where I was like, oh shit, like I have this mortgage here. A foreclosure could be a huge issue, or it might not be. And it's actually really hard to get advice on getting a foreclosure, because if you go read any of the articles or advice on it, it's usually written by the banking industry that loans money. So they obviously don't want to tell people to get a foreclosure, even if it's the best move for them. So it was one of those deals where I had to evaluate exactly where I was at that time and ignore the past. So just side note, but sometimes you have to make a hard decision and you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Sure. One other thing I'll say about this, and he might have alluded to it a little bit here, is there's that old saying that goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So we all like to say we wish we discovered Mr. Money Mustache at 21 or 18 or 7 would have been even better. But would we have acknowledged that message, and would we have acted upon it? You never know. A lot of us need to be in a bad place to pivot and change our life, or we just have to be around the right people or whatever. There's a lot of conditions and thought that goes into it. But I often wonder if I would have discovered Pete. I mean, I know he wasn't even a thing 20 years ago, but if I would have discovered Mr. Money Mustache and Get Rich Slowly at the age of 20, maybe I would have thought it was a bunch of shit. And maybe I would have even reacted against it. So who knows? I think he should be, instead of being angry for the person he was and his actions in the past, I think he should be thankful that he has the knowledge now and that he's taking action with plenty of life left to still have a lot of power in his life.
All right, next one is frustration. So I learned about fire late, but I think I can coast fi if I want to. Because I'm on a work visa, I have to keep working and be tied to the same employer, even if I don't want to. The work visa and the green card situation is the number one stress in my life, which I cannot fix.
Yeah, this is a difficult one, and I admit I don't know a whole lot about how these visas work or green cards, but it sounds like if he quit his work, he would have to leave the United States. And I'm not sure what the answer to this is. I probably should have asked him for a little bit more clarification and what he wants out of life. Like, is staying in the U.S. valuable enough to him where it's worth staying at the job? Well, one thing I would say just from being in the FI community is we're very mobile, and we have some local friends. You might have even met them, but they're going to go in Portugal and with the intent of perhaps buying a house and moving there at some point. So the U.S. is great. I appreciate my country. I'm thankful to have been born here, but there's so many places in the world that are equally good and more accessible than the U.S. might be.
Yep, that's exactly what I would say as well. Explore some other options where you have flexibility. And I too don't know much about this. I've had some friends in a similar situation where they were kind of stuck with their job, even like Canadian folks working down here in the US, same situation. You wouldn't think it would be as difficult, but they're stuck at the job too. And from what I understand, it's, sometimes difficult to get a company to sponsor you. So yeah, unfortunately, we can't offer too much more, but I guess just think outside the box. I know there's probably a lot of countries that maybe would welcome people with money, especially if you think maybe you want to start a business. I think Portugal has some good entrepreneurship programs where they want people to come and create jobs and like come with money and help, make certain areas more maybe desirable to live and jobs for the people there. I don't know much about it. I haven't looked into it, but some of my friends have talked about it as well. So
yeah, I hope I know this person. I did talk to him a little bit more. He's in California, and I think he talked about he might move to Texas. Maybe he'll come through town on his way and we could actually interview him and talk more about it. Maybe we could share some asparagus with him, see if he likes asparagus. One question about asparagus, Doug. I'm sorry to derail this once again. It'll be brief. Have you ever had that white asparagus? Do you know what I'm talking about? You ever seen that before?
I have seen it. I think I've had it before, but probably only at a restaurant. I don't recall picking it up. I think I see where you're going with this, but go ahead.
It's kind of creepy looking, like a white vegetable. And I think what they do is someone told me they pile dirt around it or maybe grow it in a dark environment. So the poor asparagus is never exposed to the sun. So it never develops the chlorophyll to turn it green. But yeah, we should do some experiments on it to see how that affects the urine. Asparagus people, if you're listening, the Asparagus Advocacy Council or whatever your name is, we're not disparaging the white asparagus. I've never even tried it. So I'm going to make a note that I actually have to go to the grocery store too today. If I see it, I'm going to buy it and give it a taste test and a pee test.
That sounds good. Yeah, the AAC, Asparagus Advocacy Council. We'll have to check that out. Okay, moving on. Next section is life after FI. So money cannot buy happiness, but it can buy the freedom to do things that we want to do. What's your experience with money after being financially independent? And how did you transition from acquiring money to spending it post-FI? And what did you allow yourself to do after FI?
Okay, yeah, I'll take this one first. My life hasn't changed as much as it might. And the reason for that is because we have kids and we want to keep them in the public schools. I have no desire to homeschool. That was a freaking disaster. So we're kind of tied down with what we can do with our life. If we didn't have kids or once they're out of the house, I would probably be more mobile. I'd be spending time in other parts of the country and maybe even other parts of the world with slow travel. One thing I'd like to do is get an RV and maybe travel down the Pacific coast of the United States or maybe spend a couple months in Portugal or some other country, but still have Longmont as a home base. So we'd probably come back here. So to answer his question, for me at least, it's all the little things that have changed. It's being able to spend more time with the kids. I can take them into school. every day I can volunteer for all their Valentine's Day parties and all the crazy stuff they've got going on there. Although that came to an abrupt end during COVID. And it's not caring so much about little decisions I used to. Like for the longest time, if we were traveling, we'd pack all these sandwiches and shit. So if we were hungry, we could eat on the plane or whatever. And now I don't think about that stuff so much anymore. Like we used to never go out to eat. And now I'm like, it's okay to spend like the $20 isn't going to affect the financial situation in any way possible, in any way. So if it's convenient or it enhances life a little bit more, or we don't have to worry about something, I will spend the money. I'm trying. One example is we're going on a FinCon, and there is a famous barbecue place called Franklin. And someone told me, or my friend Joel told me, yeah, we can go there, but there's usually a 3 or 4 hour wait to get this. I'm like, oh, geez, I don't really want to wait that. Like I'm sure Doug's is like 90% is good. Maybe even 95, Doug. Your brisket was pretty spectacular. And maybe even yours is better, so we'll judge when we go down there. So I looked on their website, and they're like, well, you could avoid the line if you order like a couple $100 worth of food. You can just come here and pick it up. So my immediately thought was, I'm going to contact Joel, Doug, and everyone else I know who's going, and I'm going to buy lunch for everyone. And it's kind of selfish because I want to taste this, but I didn't really think about the money. I can have this little fun meetup when we're in Austin and not have to wait in line. So I'm spending a couple $100 to not have to wait in line. Lines are one of my greatest annoyances in life. So to avoid that is huge. I went off on a big tangent there, but if FI is made the little things in my life much more pleasant. Just being able to take a walk around the neighborhood for a couple hours and catch up on the Lex Friedman podcast or other things. So it's not the big things yet, but I think they might be at some point.
Did you find it hard to transition from the acquisition phase to actually letting go? Because, I mean, you've been retired for, like 4 years-ish?
Yeah, 4 years, April of 2017. And yeah, I'm kind of cheating there too, because right when I left, Mindy went back to work, which was probably a good thing. I think we were spending a little bit more than we did, and it gave us a chance to buy this other house that we eventually moved to. So we really haven't had to move that much to the spending. With the home improvements we're doing, she doesn't make enough to fund all that, so we do have to sell a little bit of VTI every once in a while. And I admit, I think that is going to be difficult when we eventually start to do it. I think it'll be temporary discomfort. We'll take $50,000 out to fund our living for the year, maybe $60,000 or $80,000 if we're still working on the house. But then in a normal year, our portfolio will grow a lot more than that. So I think that fear or discomfort will go away. Quickly. And the other thing is, when she stops working, life will become even cheaper, because right now we have 2 cars, just because she's got to go into work occasionally. But after that, we would only need 1 car, so life would become, even cheaper, and we'd have more time to do things. Sometimes when we spend money, we do it out of a place of convenience. We're both working all these hours, so let's just buy dinner out or order out, which is very expensive. But once she stops, all that disappears. We'll have more time to deal with these things in our life.
Mm-hmm. So I think my experience is not an exact parallel, but also not one where I went from working and acquiring to all of a sudden a completely different lifestyle. So probably the last 5 or 6 years of my corporate career, I was working remotely anyway. So some of the things you were talking about, like slow travel, like we were doing that already while we were working. We slowly figured it out. We probably could have done it for a few more years, but the slow travel is fantastic. And in that same idea, like I hate lines. I don't want to sit in traffic. And that's usually like when we're running our errands, it's after work or something like that. But the fact that I've worked from home for so long, I would go shopping on, Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m. And there's very few people in stores just in general. You always give the example of like Home Depot at like 11 or something. Like the contractors are out and it's the middle of the week, so most people are at work. And I have been doing that and just like making things convenient for myself. And the other part is, my wife and I are still working. So my wife has a full-time gig, W-2 job. And then I have my online business. Now, I have been shaping my online business to do exactly the kind of work that I want to do and I enjoy, and getting rid of the things that I don't like, and doing less and less work. In fact, Elizabeth told me over this last weekend that she noticed that I've been working less over the summer. And I'm like, that's good. I've been trying to work less. So even if I don't take a full day off, maybe I'll go work out for like 2.5 or 3 hours and I'll just go and walk outside because it's nice. So again, my experience is probably unique, and it was so gradual that my lifestyle didn't change in a huge way. Now, as far as spending money, I don't think I've ever had a big issue with spending. I, love to acquire the money, but at some point it's like, oh, I think I can give myself permission to get like the good brisket. So I can go ahead and get like a big prime brisket. It's a few dollars more than the choice, but it's going to be good. And I enjoy that whole process of cooking and then sharing the food, for example. Or like the guitar that I pointed out earlier, like definitely a luxury splurge. But again, at some point I was like, well, maybe it's okay if I get another guitar, even though I just got one earlier this year. And, it's tough to switch gears on some of those things. Or we were just upstairs and we got a new couch because our old one was kind of a piece of junk and it was super cheap, and we haven't gotten like an actual nice couch. So we have sort of like shifted, and we're very like aware that we want to spend money on things that are important to us. So we wouldn't go splurge and get like a new car, which we don't really care that much about, but a couch, we would use it all the time, and there's a good chance that it's going to last for, 15, 20 years or something like that. So I think for me, like I said, it's been easy my whole life to spend money. So now I'm just giving myself a little bit more leeway for certain things, knowing that it's important to me or somehow it's going to make me happier in another way. Like I've been playing guitar a lot more, and that's a fantastic hobby. It exercises your brain and coordination, and it's a fun thing to do. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. What did I allow myself to do after Fi? Yeah, I guess right now I'm just buying guitars like a maniac.
So I've got a couple of follow-up questions. One serious and one silly. Do you enjoy, like for me, money is a game, and I think this is not a good mindset to have, but I enjoy, despite us having enough, I enjoy seeing the number grow, although we're not going to change our life in any way. As a result of it, it's still kind of fun to optimize and consider these decisions and look at your personal capital account 10 times a day to see that it's gone up $50 in the past. I'm not that bad. But do you enjoy, is it a game to you? Do you enjoy seeing your nest egg grow? Would it be difficult to watch it start to shrink?
I have that flaw too. Yeah. I think, so I have a couple courses, I have another podcast, YouTube channel, and I make money from those. And a good measuring stick to see if you're successful is if you earn money. Like that's a very clear thing to measure success. Yes, there's other things like, do I enjoy creating the podcast and the YouTube videos? Does the audience enjoy it? And does it generate money? So those are like 3 questions, which I'm pretty sure I ripped off from Alan Donegan. I've been listening to his podcast recently, Rebel Entrepreneur, a little plug for his show. But basically, it will be difficult to turn that off and just say, you know what? It is okay if I'm not continuing to earn money, even though the process along the way is actually pretty fun. Like I've sculpted it so that I enjoy the process. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. And it's actually a great problem to have, right? I enjoy the work that I'm doing, so I could do it if I want to, but I could also maybe stop for a year or 2 and then pick it back up or transition to some other thing I want to do. And that's one thing we haven't started doing. And most of the people that I've run into in the Fi community, like yourself and Mindy, you haven't started drawing down in any serious way. You keep accumulating. You guys are generating some money. Mindy's working. So I haven't run into many people who say, yeah, we actually started drawing down at this point. So I think once that happens, we are so conservative that we'll probably have so much more than what we need by any estimation that it won't be as hard to say, you know what, we're going to go on this kind of crazy trip and go to Iceland and, just spend whatever we want. Cause it's okay if it's like, $20,000, which sounds insane to even say out loud. But I mean, maybe it's like a 2-month trip. Like that could cost $20,000 to go on an international trip and go to an expensive place. So yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've often thought if I would change my investing strategy. I think this is why people are so into dividends, because you don't have to touch, you see it. And this might be not the right way to think about it, or I don't think they're thinking about it the right way, but they think, well, I don't have to touch my core thing because I'm getting all this money thrown off. But then on the other hand, I've thought, like, we've got these real estate syndications now that pay us out a bunch of cash every quarter. The issue now is their own pre-tax accounts, but we could change that, or maybe in the future we would do some to a post-tax account, so these things would spit off money, and then we wouldn't have to actually sell shares. And I guess if you've got like VTSAX, I don't know what the dividend yield on that is, probably between 1% and 2% somewhere. But if you've got $1 million in that, that's probably somewhere between 10 and 20,000. So you wouldn't really have to touch your core nest egg, I guess. Maybe that makes it a little bit easier. I think you're tricking yourself a little bit there, but whatever makes you sleep better at night. But,
yep.
Yeah. So my follow-up question for you, Doug, is you talked a little bit about your white couch and that thing. If you had kids, you would have never bought a white couch. Like if you buy a Tesla, you can pay extra money to get it with a white interior. And I don't know why anyone would ever do that. Like, I'm a slob. My kids are 10X slobs, and that white interior would just look like total shit in about 5 minutes. But you've got a white couch. And the first thing I thought when I saw it is, wow, like if someone was drinking red wine, would they be banned from the couch? Like, they'd have to sit. Not only could they not sit on it, but they'd have to stay like 3 feet away from it. Is that the case? Like, do you all like drink or ever eat dinner on the couch, or does that?
I'm not even allowed to sit on it.
Really? Okay. God, I sat. I did take a shower before I came over here. Hopefully I did enough. Leave my stink on it.
Yeah, we realized we have like the least kid-friendly home now. We have a dog that's not super friendly, but she looks friendly. We have a white couch. We got a new liquor cabinet too, which is like filled with liquor and alcohol and stuff. We have a kegerator in the garage. Like, this is the wrong place for any child. So
just buy some guns and knives.
Yeah. Luckily those are up. Those are out of reach mostly. So
yeah.
Not all the knives. So a lot of the knives are out.
Yeah, so maybe the solution is, Doug, you just allow yourself to eat white food. Like, the only thing you can eat on the couch is like cauliflower,
white asparagus,
mashed potato, white asparagus. You knew where I was going with that. Yeah, white wine. So if it landed on the couch, it wouldn't cause an issue.
Oh man! All right. Well, I think we got through most of all of the points here. Some of these from Mind Speaks 18, they were so deep. And hopefully our insight was slightly helpful. I mean, I think some of these were more psychological and therapy based, where, it's probably dangerous to listen to advice from Carl and I, but I think we're relatively well adjusted, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Doug does not actually own any weapons that I know of.
Right. Yeah. So I think we are good to go. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up today?
Yeah, one final thought. I was thinking I always try to come up with a unique Halloween costume. And this year, maybe we both do one, and I'm matching one. You can probably see where I'm going with this. And then we could record on the YouTube video. Maybe I could be green asparagus, you could be white asparagus, and we get like this costume's probably already out there. So AAC, Asparagus Advocacy Council, if you're listening, we're fully behind you, and we will have a show around you. They probably have a banner that we could hang up behind with like fields of asparagus. Like, I don't even know where they grow that shit. It's probably in California or somewhere, but maybe we could go take a tour of an asparagus farm at some point.
Yeah, I think that could be a dangerous costume for us to go around in. Very phallic, I would imagine. At least the way I'm imagining it.
It could be scratch and sniff too, maybe.
Yep, that's right. That sounds really good. That's a great costume. All right. Well, one thing that I usually forget, so sign up for our email list. If you've made it this far, you obviously find us somewhat entertaining. If you're not on the email list, MHFi.club. We send out about 1 email per week. We haven't ramped it up yet, but yeah, about 1 email per week. And we just let you know that the episode is out. The other thing is the economy conference. So Carl, you're going to be speaking. I have tickets. I'm going to be attending. And I did see, I think this is public now, but Mr. Money Mustache Pete is going to be at economy, right?
Yeah, that's true. This is going to be great. JD Roth is going to be there. Pete's going to be there. So all these old school types are going to be there. So it's going to be, yeah, super cool. Super looking forward to it.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it sold out by the time this episode comes out, but check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. And if you use Carl's, I guess, coupon code of 1500, you can save some money. So Carl's an affiliate and he'd earn some money if you do that, but then he'd be able to buy more asparagus.
Actually, Doug, I do not earn any money, so it will not earn me any money. But maybe the AAC is headquartered in Ohio, and if so, we can visit them.
We can check it out. Okay, I thought you were an affiliate. Okay, that's cool. Well, you're doing your affiliate marketing wrong then, if you're not getting paid. But Diana's great. If you didn't check out the episode, I'm excited to meet her in person and head over to Cincinnati. And then the other is to check out MHFi. I enjoyed it very much. And there's a link in the show notes here. There are various locations across the country. And I'm not planning on attending any more this year just because of my schedule. But if there's one close to you or one you could make it to, highly recommended. You've been to a bunch, right?
Yeah, I've been to a bunch. I know there are 2 more this year. One might be done by the time this airs. That is the Midwest one. And the other one is Joshua Tree out in California. And I think that one is sold out. I might go to that one if I can get a ticket. But it's not looking good at this point.
Yeah, that'll be a really cool one. Have you been to Joshua Tree before?
I have not. I've driven through California, like Las Vegas to San Diego or Los Angeles, but I don't think I've ever stopped off and seen that. It's been so freaking hot. But yeah, and I'll bet inland California is a big agriculture. Maybe that's where the AAC is. So I could stop off and see them. Have a multi-purpose trip.
We're going to look this up as soon as we stop recording, by the way. So, okay, cool. I think we plugged all the things we're supposed to plug. Can you think of anything else?
I cannot.
All right. Well, I was going to say your blog, 1500 Days, and I do stuff over on The Doug Show. It's another podcast. If you want to see the other things that I work on, you could check that stuff out. And yeah, I think we plugged everything we could possibly plug at this point. So
I think so. I thought of something else in my mind, but it would be extremely inappropriate what we learned recently. Yeah, I'm not touching it.
All right. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Doug. See you soon.
So this is just the sound check here. And we've been hanging out a lot the last couple of weeks. It's been busy. You had a lot of visitors in town, and we actually got to interview a handful of them. But how was it over the last, I would say, 3 weeks? We've been doing a ton of stuff with very social outings.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Doug, I don't really like when my life is like that. Just there's something going on, and every time you finish something up, you're running to the next thing that you have to do. And I don't like that. I find time goes by a lot faster, and you're not sitting back and enjoying life. So one thing I try to do now is to avoid that is not tell people a specific time. And that might be good because, again, I was late today. So whenever I tell people I'm going to do something, I'm like, well, how about around 10 or between 10 and 10:30, so I don't feel that sense of urgency. But when there's stuff like we had this weekend with the great event, and don't get me wrong, it was awesome. I think it was the most fun thing we've ever had at the HQ. You have to be there at certain times, and there's all the prep work for us that goes into it. And yeah, it was very busy. So while it was good, I'm looking forward to dialing my life back a little bit. How about you, Doug?
I feel the same way. And I usually will still give more exact times, but I did notice when we were texting that you gave a window, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I don't have too much going on. That's 100% fine anyway. But I was like, I bet he'll be, I don't even know what time you got here, but I think it was around 9. So it worked out perfectly. But I was so stressed out on the first day of that event. I ended up being the videographer, which I've never done any of that. I was using equipment that I hadn't used before in a place that I hadn't filmed before. And there were all these variables very much outside of my control. And a lot of people were counting on me to like not fuck it up. So I think I did mostly good, small fuck ups, but nothing like major. I was stressed out, and by the end of the weekend, I felt much better. But still, like even outside of the event, we were still like having meals with other people and doing some other stuff. And there were additional people in town that we were able to interview. So it was fun. But yeah, once all that, I guess, dialed down, it felt a lot more relaxed. So
Yeah, it was so cool that you were able to go in there and record everything because we hadn't actually planned for that. So you being there was a bonus, and hopefully you hit the record button every time. But now we've got some great material that we could probably use for a future show, and maybe that will become the show.
yeah, it's yeah, I'm excited to see what will happen with the footage and stuff. And we have some stuff that we won't reveal until sometime in the future. I think people will just find out about it whenever it happens. We're being very vague, but okay. Cool. I think let's give it a shot here and see if this baby recorded.